We tend to believe that what we see is everything. However, what we see, perceive, and understand are inherently limited to a paradigm that the dominant people in this society agree. To understand how planning theory contributes to my understanding of planning practice, this question should be raised. Is planning value-neutral process? The answer is no. Friedman noted the importance of recognizing the worldview of planning theories. In other words, planning practices embed certain value systems. Planning theories shed different angles of light on the planning practice that reveal unnoticed, yet fundamental facets of the reality. To illustrate this dynamic, I will share a planning practice that could have used communicative planning as a light to expose the neglected reality. Seoul, South Korea went through drastic urban renewals for several decades. The powerless residents are displaced for the sake of the privileged through a typical urban renewal process. Without planning theory, I didn't know what exactly is problematic and how to fix it because instrumental rationality was so strongly supported. The economic growth was the strongest rationale for the nation at the time, and the top-down process, in fact, excluded the original residents in their decision-making process. And here, communicative planning theory taught me how to transform the planning process by changing the ground for understanding what is a planning. Communicative planning theorists have engaged Habermas's idea of communicative rationality to offer a framework for a more democratic decision-making process. Communicative rationality is a human rationality as a necessary outcome of successful communication. So this measure reveals the pitfalls of instrumental rationality. The urban renewal process in Seoul lacked of democratic planning process. Defining information is based on the people who have the privilege to participate in the planning process, mainly planners and developers. Innes explains that information became embedded in political agendas and organizational attention focused on the issues it presented. The requirements for development and use of specific kinds of information are told who was empowered and legitimate to speak and which interests were represented. The result was to change the terms of public discourse and the taken for granted norms of collective action. So how can we deal with this situation? Developers and planners have different types of knowledge from that of neighbors. According to Friedman, the planning process should involve the social learning process. Experts or planners own and use process knowledge for the planning process, examples and theories shared among practitioners. The community, however, has experience-based knowledge. The concept of social learning is a simple yet powerful model to design a much better planning practice, such as effective public engagement to give voice to the marginalized people in the planning process. Planners should identify the answers to the fundamental questions such as who are the stakeholders, what is the public good, and what is the scope of planning by communicative process. It has been constantly questioned whether it is possible to implement the communicative or collaborative planning process. Paramal Roy notes the concern that the collaborative planning processes may reinforce present neoliberal hegemony for the market-driven local state and planning agencies. As the metaphor in the beginning, planning theory functions as lights that shed in different angles to identify the unnoticed aspects of reality and overcome the shortcomings of one light or one dominant theory. So, communicative planning theory can function righteously by collaboration with not only the government or the direct interest groups of the issue, but also by participation of NGOs and grassroots organizations that conduct transactive planning. equity planning, and radical planning, and so on.